And welcome to another booktube video from me, Lauren, from Lauren and the Books. I hope you're all having a wonderful day today. Today I'm going to be talking about the books that I read in the month of May. I read 11 books in the month of May, and yeah, it was a good reading month. It was all okay, and then the last book I've read this month has been one of my favourite books this year. So I'm really pleased that I ended on such a high, because the rest of the month was like fine. I'll start with the books that I listened to on audiobook, and the one that I'm not going to talk about much. I have been working my way through all the Harry Potters, and I got to the last Harry Potter audiobook this month, of Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, and I sort of read and then listen to a bit and read and listen to a bit and fall asleep listening to it and things like that. So very happy to be at the end, but also sad because it means probably no more Harry Potter listening to or reading to until next year. But yeah, very much enjoyed that. 5 stars as ever. The next one I listened to was the audiobook of Wundersmith, The Calling of Morrigan Crow, which is the second book in the Nevermore series. I really enjoyed this, listening to it and the experience of listening to it. I read it last year when it first came out. I read Nevermore, the first book, when it in paperback October or something last year. Absolutely loved it, and then read Wundersmith when it first came, the day it came out. I think I went and bought it at Waterstones. I did, in Norwich. I remember I was staying at Mercedes, and then started reading it. And my experience of reading it last year was, I feel like it wasn't as good as the first one, and instead of sort of taking little bits of inspiration from Harry Potter, I felt like a lot of it was just like reworked Harry Potter, and I don't know if it just fell a bit flat for me last year. But this year, on listening to it, I really enjoyed it. There are some bits that I really don't like, and there's parts in there where I think, oh god, like that could have been cut down by a lot. For instance, there's a whole bit where she's being taught by Professor Onstolt, who's a tortoise, and I just don't get any joy out of that. He's really horrible to her, and he's sort of like a bit of a Snape character in that he comes good in the end. But for me, it was just like too little too late, and like I just felt like sometimes the villainous characters are really built up to be villainous, and the good characters are really built up to be good. Now, it is a middle grade book, and I can understand why that happens. And I'm picking out the bits that I don't like, but I've got to say, I did enjoy the experience of listening to it more than I did reading it last year. I don't know if it's because I've just allowed a little bit to sit with, for it to sit a little bit. But also, I will say, the girl who does the narration, Gemma Whelan, who I believe is in Game of Thrones. I haven't watched Game of Thrones the whole way through, so I don't know who she played. She does a fantastic job of the audiobook. So if you feel like you read the book last year and it didn't work for you, or if you just want to start them from the beginning, the audiobooks are just absolutely incredible. Really loved it. Thought it was really good. So yeah, there are parts of it that I'm like meh, but majority I enjoyed it, and I really enjoyed the audiobook of it. And then the last audiobook I listened to is a book called TheFive. I've forgotten who it's by. I never remember who it's by. Hallie Rubenhold. It's called TheFive, The Untold Lives of the Women Killed by Jack the Ripper. And I listened to this. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. I really enjoyed it. I saw Simon read it earlier on in the year, and always thought, oh yeah, that might be something I'll be interested in going to. And I really enjoy non-fiction on audio. Like, I really love it. It's probably my favourite thing to listen to on audio is non-fiction. And this is a book all about the 5 women that Jack the Ripper killed. And their lives up until the point he killed them, with a little bit afterwards. But the main focus is their lives, because so often, like, I didn't know anything about these women who'd been killed by Jack the Ripper. All I knew in my head was that they were prostitutes. Well, that's a lie, because they're not all prostitutes. And you go into details of their childhood and how they ended up in East London when Jack the Ripper was about, and just their whole journeys up until that point. And I just felt like it was a really important study on these women who otherwise have just been sort of written off as prostitutes that were killed by Jack the Ripper. It also focuses, I can hear Minnie do, what are you doing, Minnie? I think she's clearing up after a poo. It also focuses on like aspects of life during Victorian times, so working in the workhouses, what it was like for sex workers of that time, just life in general, things they would eat, how they would pay for their rent and stuff like that. And I just really enjoyed it. I found it really valuable. My history knowledge is poo, because when I was at school, back to school, when you got to the age of 14, you had to pick whether or not you wanted to do history or geography, and I picked geography because I was better at geography. And I remember, like, up until then, my history knowledge, like, we'd done sort of like Industrial Revolution and just like that really was relevant to me. So it was really, really interesting to hear about these women and life for women in general in Victorian times. So very much enjoyed it, would definitely recommend. So yes, very, very much enjoyed it. Then let's get on to the actual books. The first book I read was The Tales of Beedle the Bard by J.K. Rowling. This is illustrated by Chris Riddell. Really like this. This is also signed by Chris Riddell. It's my birthday present from Simon. To Lauren, best wishes, Chris Riddell. Thanks, Chris Riddell. And I really enjoyed this. I actually started reading this. I went to the Women's Prize for Fiction shortlist party at the beginning of the month and missed my fucking train stop on the way home because I was listening to music. So I hadn't planned to read this, but was sort of grizzling. Not really grizzling, but like bottom lip going at a train station because I was going to be over an hour and 20 minutes late because I'd missed my bloody train stop. So I read this to raise morale, and raise morale it did. Very much enjoyed it. It's what I really like about it is the sort of additional like Dumbledore stuff that's in there. So there are a series of fairy tales from the Harry Potter world, and then Dumbledore sort of breaks it down for you in the following pages, and just really enjoyed it. I feel like if you are into Harry Potter books, then this is a must have. The next book I read was Power to the Princess. This is written by Vita Morrow and illustrated by Julia Berry-Siatu. David bought me this for a Christmas present, and I really love it. It is like fairy tale stories, mainly involving princesses, retold with a feminist perspective, and I just fucking loved it. I thought it was brilliant. I gave it 4 stars. This is definitely going to be a book that I go ahead and buy all the both little girls and little boys in my life. But I really like it, and good sort of good representation. There's LGBT plus characters in here. There's characters with disabilities in here. There's black characters in here. There's all sorts of different people represented, and really liked it. Really enjoyed it very much. Would definitely reread that again. I would definitely recommend as well. A lot of recommendations. The next one I read was Perfectly Preventable Deaths by Deirdre Sullivan. This is the proof copy. I always go to say it's called Sisters Sacrifice Witchcraft, but it's not. This is a proof copy, but it is about sisters, sacrifice and witchcraft. You follow a set of twin sisters, Madeleine and Catelyn, who have moved to a new life in Ballyfran, which is a part in Ireland where they've moved with their mother to her new boyfriend. It might even be husband. I think they might be married. Their new house, which is a dilapidated castle. And whilst one thrives in sort of social scene and quite quickly meets a boyfriend who is very questionable, but meets this boyfriend and makes friends, the other girl is very much an introvert and doesn't thrive as much as she does. Now they're sort of like, there's themes of sisterhood, as you would suspect by the front cover, sisters, sacrifice and witchcraft, and it all sort of it's a very slow ploddy novel, which I enjoyed. Sort of like they describe it as a gothic is the Irish Gothic we deserve, and I would definitely say that that's what it is, until sort of like about 50, not even 50 pages, I would say as far as like maybe like 20 pages from the end, when all hell breaks loose, and it's really like an episode of Buffy or something, but enjoyed it nevertheless. Would I reread it? Probably not, but yeah, for what it was fun at the time, and I did enjoy it, so yeah. Well done. The next one is another, I think this might have Minnie got me this for Christmas or Mother's Day. This is Mean Girls Club, Pink Dawn by Ryan Heschker, published by Nobrow. It is a graphic novel about this group of women who are the Mean Girls Club, and they're sort of smashing the patriarchy and having fights and doing good and things like that. I really enjoyed the pink, look, you'll see this is a really good picture. Come on, where are you? The pink, look. The artwork is amazing. It's really like retro looking and great, but the storyline for me was just fine. Like it was nothing that was like got me too excited. And yeah, it was 2 stars, and I'm sort of struggling to remember it now. But yeah, it was fine. But the artwork's really cool in this, and I really like the pink. I might even like do something about maybe getting this framed because it's really cool. The next one was a book that I read for my Patreon book club, and that was Vox by Christina Dorcher. she can't even hold it up. And this, we had a good discussion about this actually, because a lot of us had issues with it, and a few of us really enjoyed it, which was good. I was somewhere along the sort of issues end of the spectrum. So this follows Jean, who is living in a sort of future America. I don't feel like we're given actual time frames. I think they say it's been 50 years since America's first black president. So if we're speaking in actual time, it's sort of like 40 years on from now. And women are wear bracelets where they're only allowed to speak 100 words a day, and that is registered on their bracelet, and if they speak any more than 100 words, they get an electric shock coursing through their body. So we're following Jean and her family. So Jean is married and she has 4 children. She has an older son, 2 twin boys, and a young daughter who's just started school, and obviously the only people in their family that wear them are Jean and her daughter Sonia. And quite quickly on, Jean, you find out that Jean used to be an amazing neuroscientist, and the president's brother is suffering from a neurological condition which needs Jean's help. So they offer her a deal and say they'll take off her bracelet if she's able to help them, and she sort of negotiates and ends up getting Sonia's bracelet taken off as well, and then you sort of follow from then on Jean's work on trying to beat this, trying to look into this neurological condition that the president's brother's got. That was all fine and cool, but again, in a similar way to sort of the Deirdre Sullivan book, it really picked up in sort of like almost like a film script way. Like they'd really been building, and I enjoyed the first half. I really enjoyed the first half, but then from then on it just sort of got a bit mad, and then there was just like, and the action was so fast. There's a few points in it where I was like, did that even happen? Like I'm not even quite sure what happened. And actually someone from my work has also read this. I'll go away for a minute and then I'll tell you to come back, because there's going to be a few spoilers in the next bit. So there's a part where one of Jean's, so go away, there's a part when one of Jean's neighbours kills herself she commits suicide by recording her voice on a tape recorder and then playing it over and over again so that her bracelet registers that she's speaking but she's not speaking, and basically the electric shock is so much that it ends up killing her. And my colleague said, oh, how did she kill herself, because it all just seemed a bit blur. And then there's another part in there where she is walking through the labs, and they have there's a lot in here about testing on animals, and they have chimpanzees there that they're going to test on. And at one point I felt like she was getting in the cage with a chimpanzee, but then she wasn't. She was being pulled up against the cage by the chimpanzee who was reaching out and things like that. And yeah, there's a bit at the end also, another annoying thing is that a fucking man saves the day. So all of this like women and like her coming together with fellow scientists and putting an end to this sort of culture where women are only allowed to speak 100 words is saved by a man at the end who sort of takes a bullet for everyone. But even then that's a bit confusing. So yeah, for me, you can come back now. For me, it was, the first half was very good, but the second half there was just not much substance in there. It was sort of like plot, 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 action, action, action. So that's what I felt about that. Interesting. And then I read this, which I really enjoyed. This is Things in Jars by Jess Kidd. I did the first chapter tag, which I will link down below, where I read the first chapter of 5 books and then decided what book I wanted to read off the back of that, and this is the one that won. Now it was tough because there was a few books in there I wanted to read, but I really enjoyed this. This is set in London in 1863, and you follow Bridie Devine, who is an investigator. She says she's the finest female detective of her age, and she's taken on a case in which she is looking for a missing child, and you sort of follow Bridie looking for this missing child in present day, or like 1863, and you also follow Bridie's childhood 20 years ago, where she was sort of taken on by a doctor, and some relationships she had with some people there. And then you're also following Bridie, the child that Bridie is looking for, her being taken away. And it turns out that the child that they're looking for, she's described as a mero. So she has like fish teeth, and she attacks, and and her attacks can be fatal. And she's also got a skill in which she can look through people's brains using her fingers. So you're sort of looking into that. And then there's also another sort of theme where it goes, where she's got a sort of like someone who's helping her who is a dead man. The ghost of him is helping her, and there's like a semi-romantic vibe going on there. I really enjoyed it. I really like Jess Kidd's writing, and this sort of set in Victorian times as well. Well, probably pre-Victorian, isn't it? 1863. No, I think that counts. I don't know. Like I said, I didn't do history. It does say Victorian, doesn't it? Yes, it is. Enchanting Victorian detective novel. We got there in the end. But yeah, I did find it enchanting and quite charming. There's also some pretty like grim shit that happens in here, like quite a lot of violence and stuff. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I like Jess Kidd stuff, and I'm looking forward to reading The Hoarder, so well done. The next two are my two favourite books of the month. The first one is Convenience Store Woman by Sayuka Murata. I read this for my book club with my pals on Facebook, and I really enjoyed it. It follows Kiko, who is a 36-year-old woman who has worked in a convenience store for, I think, something like 18 years. She's the longest serving member of staff there, and she draws such comfort and regularity and monotony. Like that sort of lifestyle really suits her character. She needs those things in her life, and her family are forever questioning her, like, why is she still working there? And she says it's for health reasons, and they're always very concerned why she hasn't got a husband yet. And so she ends up doing something sort of halfway through this novel in order to please her family, so that people will stop, her family and friends, so that people will stop asking questions. And yeah, I enjoyed it. Sort of like darkly humorous. There's a few sort of like bits in there, and yeah, I really liked it. And I can completely see why someone like Kiko would find somewhere like that very comforting. I used to work in a cost cutter when I was younger, and I very much enjoyed the regularity of it and things like that. And I can see why someone who potentially isn't as socially skilled as I am would find that even further comforting. So yeah, really enjoyed that very much. And then the last book that I've read, and I've just finished it now, and as I said, it's one of my favourite books of the year, is Lowborn by Kerry Hudson. This has just come out this month. I only got sent it earlier this week, and I picked it up a couple of days after I got sent it, and I read it in almost 2 days. Like, if I'd have had less going on, I probably would have sat and read it in a day. But I love this. This is a memoir of Kerry Hudson's childhood up until she's 18. Growing up, getting away, and returning to Britain's poorest towns. She sort of lived all over the country. Her mum would sort of up sticks with a new boyfriend and leave for the next city, and they'd using the National Express, and she never really had many belongings and things like that. So you're following that journey, but you're also following a journey of her returning to these places as well. And as I said, she's lived all over the country. She's lived like in Glasgow, no, Aberdeen, and Canterbury, Norfolk, North Shields, all over the place. We don't have the same background, but I have lived in areas where poverty is a big hitter, particularly the place where I work. There's a lot of poverty around there, and sort of this is just sort of looking inside those front doors that I don't get to live in, because I've got a very privileged and like my life compared to the people who are living in my country, which I just can't believe that there's 1 in 5 people in this country use food banks. And yeah, it was really eye-opening, and her revisits to the places where she'd live I found really touching, and her feelings about revisiting these places really come across amazingly in this. She's sometimes frightened to return to those places because they bring back such awful memories. And then particularly when she goes to Great Yarmouth, there's a whole big thing about what they're doing to the community there, and like all these she visits a project which is happening, and she just says she wishes she had things like that when she was younger. And I just found it amazing. I really loved it. I really enjoyed it so much. I think it's really important, and I will definitely be urging others to read it. And yeah, one of my favourite books of the year so far. So yeah, lovely. So yes, those are the books that I read in the month of May. Let me know if you've read any of these books. Let me know what you thought of any of them, or let me know if you fancy reading any of them. And I will see you all again soon. God, it's so heavy to pick up, I can't do it. And I will see you all again soon for another BookTube video. Goodbye!